Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Alien Earth. After being killed by a chestburster in our first breakdown, and then being put into a hybrid on our second, I've now actually ended up becoming mates with the Xenomorphs. Look at this little guy. He's always drunk, that lad. Anyway, we're here to talk about the episode, and that is Observation, which is our fourth in the series. That title basically sums up the premise and actually applies to a lot of different things. We not only have the specimens being spied on, but also the characters as well. Kirsh watches over slightly looks over Joe, and everyone's slightly on edge. Though little happens here plot-wise, it's very unsettling. There's metaphors for grooming, a lot of manipulation, and just an undertone of something sinister. In the end though, what we get is the fact that Prodigy's making xenomorphs and the machines are questioning their masters. I'm sure it's all gonna go swimmingly. I mean, it worked out for the USM Auriga. That film was all about corporate control and how in trying to play God, you often realise you can't. Cavalier's arrogance has been very cavalier and he seems to be constantly pushing the boundaries. Not only has he created artificial life, but he's now also making monsters. In the end, I feel like me, Wendy might even tame the Xenomorphs, and that's the way things close out. Noah Hawley has said that the series is about nature and technology and how both are trying to kill us. And maybe that's where we'll end things, with both working together. Where we begin though is on the beach, and we see clips from last week. Whereas there we got cuts of the Xenomorph, we instead see a doll's head on the sand. It reminds me a lot of the opening of Alien 3 where Ripley crash landed on Fury 161. There we saw water lapping at the sand on the hellish post-industrial planet. Just like that, Neverland's also isolated and kept secret from the rest of civilization. We could even argue the hybrids are Cavalier's dolls or action figures, and it really feels very Ghost in the Shell-like. There the shell was almost like a doll that one could implant their personality into. We even had moments where we focused on mannequins in a shop. This was supposed to make us question whether the AI had soul, or if we were simply looking at mannequins that could move and imitate being human. And seeing this doll far off, I did initially go back and forth over whether it was machine, synth, or just an inanimate object. What makes a soul? Could this doll have one? And are the synths just things boy can break and throw away? Even when it comes to the AI here, he doesn't really care about them. He's got the specimens now, and they're the cool new toy he wants to play with. It's even at the point I was like, I wonder if they're going to play Toy Story instead of Ice Age this episode.
It came! It finally came!
Basically like that. I don't want to play with you anymore sort of thing. Now Boy is very much of the move fast and break things mentality, just like Mark Zuckerberg. This is explored later when Arthur explains to Dame how what Boy is doing is in science. The hybrids have barely been examined and his attention's already diverted. They were sent to a crash site and the data from that hasn't even been extrapolated. He just wants the conversation that's going to challenge him. Because of this, upon discovering that Wendy can talk to them, he becomes obsessed with developing that. His giddy excitement at being able to speak to them that just takes over his life, and he now barely cares about the other kids. Beyond that, Boy was never really meant to be a father, and it's clear that he doesn't want the staff to be parents.
She's scared. She needs me. Careful. You're not a mother.
This is especially damaging, as in the episode we learn Dame's married to Arthur. Arthur mentioned in the premiere how he and his wife couldn't have kids, so it's clear she's been trying to fill the void here. Now after the titles, we see Wendy awake and confused. It's the second time she's passed out now, but she can't hear because they've turned off her hearing. I'm guessing that this is because they realised it could cause her to collapse and don't want anything that could further damage the unit. Seeing Kirsh and Dame from her point of view, it's very much like RoboCop. There we saw Alex Murphy waking up in his robot body and seeing the people who made him. In a way, he was also a lot like the hybrids. He died and his brain was put into a machine and he started to become more and more sentient. That film's about him regaining his humanity and proving that he's more than machine. Here we have the constant back and forth with Prodigy describing her as a unit. Her brother sees her as his sister, and both sides are desperate to define her. But ultimately, it's Wendy who will choose. Being able to control their hearing's also another level of power that they have over the hybrids. The silence is nice, but unfortunately it's broken up by Cavalier, announcing he's having a colonic no less, which yet totally changes the mood. He then tells Curly to just press buttons and turn some knobs. It's almost like a sort of bring your synth daughter to work day. She's slotted into the role though as the person at his side, but she's always behind him and even enters the room after him.
Just assume I'm ahead of you, always.
Which is a nice line that plays off how he views himself and all those beneath him, including Curly. She's eager to stand as an equal and make her mark, but all Boy cares about is his favourite girl, Wendy. He also says,
It's an IT issue, not a gap session.
He shows how little he cares for the well-being of children as he dismisses Dame, saying it's not one of her gab sessions. The guy simply calls it an IT issue, and he's like, Bitches leave. Dame, Arthur and Joe are really the only ones safeguarding Wendy from Boy.
Oh good, it's the brother.
Joe's concerned and confused by her hearing being taken offline, and Boy asks him how he's finding his new lung, which sounds a bit threatening. Are you going to turn his lung off? We saw last week how he was pierced by the Xenomorph's tail, which led to him needing a bionic one. He's been given the very best care in the world, but this wasn't out the kindness of Cavalier's heart. In this capitalist hellscape where corporations have replaced governments, his medical debts used to extort him. Thus, he's indebted forever and unable to work his way out, and now the corporation control him and also his choices. Later, Adam reminds Joe of his place, keeps calling Marcy Wendy, and basically says, neither of them are going home. They need him to confirm that his sister's indeed his sister, and the transfer of consciousness is working as intended. He's also used as a way to manipulate Wendy. She doesn't want her brother to go, and thus both are used to blackmail the other. Joe is also told his sister isn't his sister, and she's basically the property of Prodigy Corp. While they've been trying to work and push the idea of this being the next stage in human evolution, ultimately it comes down to ownership. If people accept the terms and conditions of this program, they'll ultimately be owned by Prodigy, which is kind of horrifying. When they want to sell her to investors or to the public, she's human, but when it comes to her being human with her brother, she's classed as just a unit. I do feel like the series will be about her breaking free and leaving Neverland just like the original Wendy. It's painful as Joe's the only one who sees her as human and keeps calling her Marcy as opposed to Wendy. I love this scene combined with the other one I mentioned earlier though, as it shows two wildly different lives. Both Samuel and Blinken and Alex Lawther, who play Boy and Joe respectively, are pretty much the same age. They're also very similar looks-wise, you know, both British in real life, and yeah, I think they've cast them for a reason, but one's a trillionaire, whereas the other's his employee. Even here, Cavalier patronizingly reminds Joe how he works for him or one of his holding companies.
You work for me, or should I say you work for a subsidiary of a holding company of an LLC of mine. Yeah, how's a new lung?
Just kind of talks about his network of power and how he basically runs everything. The boy genius can do what he wants, while poor Joe's on the hook for his medical debts. We even saw how Joe was desperate to go to medical school, but he couldn't. Joe's social mobility is limited as he can't get out of his contract, which is also like the prison that Wendy's in. Just like Rain and Andy in Alien Romulus, Joe and Wendy are stuck in the social class they were born in and now are controlled by the person with power. Even when it came to Joe, he was only at the crash site because
computer says no.
I even find it pretty horrifying how he's harvested his organs for part of his experiment. Like the guy didn't consent and the guy doesn't see people as humans, and instead everyone's just a form of product. This power balance is once more hinted in the blocking of the set as we have Boy standing up the stairs looming down on Joe. Now, we don't know much about Boy's early life, but we have discussed the theory that he was an old billionaire who then put his mind in the hybrid body at age 15, which would explain why he's very intelligent.
My boy's wicked smart.
The Google article last week talked how he was in a car crash, and maybe this was a fatal thing that made him have to transfer his consciousness. I don't know, we're spitballing here. Boy then refers to his new lung and says,
You'll never guess what we did with the old one.
Using someone's old lung to create the scariest monster. You're lovely, you're really cute, the scariest monster to ever exist in the universe. That should be a serious piece of science. But Boy looks like he wants to tell a friend about a dirty magazine he found in the woods or a great YouTube channel that he always hits the thumbs up on. Also makes me want to tell you about the sponsors of our video. Now at this point, Wendy cries out,
I can't hear.
Okay.
Joe's horrified that they brought back the samples to their lab as he's seen firsthand how horrifying that they are. Not you, not you. The hybrids and people here are removed from the horror because they're either like super strong or didn't see it firsthand. However, he's been up close and personal with them. He basically also plays down his surgery as he doesn't want to worry his sister. She recounts what happened, and we learn that the noise is
like bugs rubbing their legs together.
They say this is something that crickets do to communicate.
Peter, I'm your conscience, Jiminy Cricket. Ah, bug!
And it seems like the communication is very high-pitched. As Wendy can communicate using it, no doubt Prodigy can come up with basically Google Translate for it. She also calls the face hugger.
It's a baby.
Humanizing the alien is very, very interesting, and these kind of takes don't always work out too well. Where it does though is something like 28 years later, where we saw the main characters help deliver an infected baby. Just made it seem like there was slightly more to them when Mother's intuition kicked in and broke through the infection. In the end though, it's reshaping what we know about the enemy, similar to what the Book of Boba Fett did with the Tusken Raiders.
Like a panther. Yes.
I am cautious that this storyline's been pushed forward because the Xenomorphs are like pure chaos. There's a reason why in all the Alien vs Predator stories that the humans team with the latter, but they definitely have that depth of communication. We saw in Alien 3 how the queen in her body meant the Xenomorph wouldn't attack her. The newborn in Resurrection was also kind of a cross between human and Xenomorph. That was due to her DNA being combined with the queen, and thus it saw her as a mother. I do wonder if Wendy's gonna fit that role due to seemingly calming down the creature at the end. Something in her code allows her to speak with them, and thus she may be able to control. Oh, look at you. Oh, you're beautiful. What a beautiful little puppy. What a beautiful little puppy he is. What a beautiful puppy. It's also heavily reminiscent of Sarah Kerrigan in the StarCraft franchise, whose DNA merged with Zerg. The Locust Queen from Gears of War also showed there's levels of control that can be adapted. Queens, of course, lead the hive, and Wendy could end up becoming Xenomorph Queen. Boy is en route to Curly again, as he asks if she can hear anything. She tries to pretend she can, but he scolds her for just saying what he wants to hear.
Don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me the truth.
He also quotes Isaac Asimov.
Asimov said above a certain level, technology is indistinguishable from magic.
It's something that gets played on later when Toodles calls himself
Isaac.
While Kirsh says Newton in response, I did wonder if it could also mean Asimov. Asimov wrote the sci-fi stories in the Foundation collection, and this has since become, well, the foundation of sci-fi. This was the first story to mention a galactic empire, and Dune, Star Wars, and countless things have been inspired by his work. However, upon doing my research, I actually found this quote, though often attributed to Asimov, was really coined by Arthur C. Clarke. He wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, which also featured AI turning against its masters. Considering that was written in the 60s, you can see how forward-thinking that he was. So maybe Hawley knew that and deliberately misquoted it, so losers like me would look into it. Asimov actually came up with the 3 laws of robotics, which was heavily featured in iRobot, and later sort of played upon in RoboCop. These laws meant AI couldn't harm humans, but in the end these rules were broken, which could be what we're seeing in the show. Curly's then made fun of as Boy says,
Sure, you speak French, but can you do that?
Wendy then practices talking in Alien. I cracked up when Boy said this.
Oh, the brother's having a feeling.
He really despises Joe and just wants Wendy to be isolated, which gets built upon later. Joe wants her to rest though, but Boy says she has a lithium-ion battery which can power a small city. In the end, you know, they've got this amazing power, but all they've done is basically create something that can extend rich people's lives. This is while people around the world are all still energy poor. Boy could power the entire planet and uplift people out of poverty, but in the end he chooses not to. Also wonder how often that she needs to charge. Seems like they go down every night, and potentially she'll run out of power if she's away from her station too long. So she may even have to remain prisoner on Neverland. Cavalier doesn't stop bickering until Wendy stands up for herself, and he seems to be competing with Joe for her interest. This kind of plays off him berating Arthur last week, as he clearly just wants someone to grow a spine.
Please, grow a spine.
Still though, he's the king, and this is his world.
It's my world. He just lives in it.
which I felt might even be a nod to this line.
I run shit here. You just live here.
Cavalier even sits on the chair and he appears like a king with a throne. Even Adam's at the side acting like his hand.
Give me evil, sexy Hamlet. Settle into it. Enjoy it. And cut!
It plays into how the corporations are now like a royal family, and we've seen with the Utanis how controls pass down through the bloodline. We even learn later how people ceded the rights to corporations as democracy wasn't working. Sometimes political subtext and metaphors, they can be a bit on the nose, but Hawley, I think, manages to get the balance just right here. In the end though, Boy basically just wants to use Wendy as a conduit to talk directly to the aliens. He also worries if Utani gets back the creatures, he'll wake up with a xenomorph in his chest. The fear of being overthrown feels very medieval and kinda ties back to that king thing. Now, we then cut to Wendy's bedroom, and I loved how she said,
And this is my bed. Well, it's more like a charging station, but it's kind of like a bed.
She's also got some drawings of her brother, and we see one of her picking all the kids up. This happened in episode 1, and it's a pretty neat touch to have her draw this happy memory. It's interesting she says she doesn't sleep as well, as we did sort of see her dreaming in episode 1. Do androids dream of electric sheep? She was a sheep there, Machines having thoughts though when they go down is something that was hotly debated by Philip K. Dick. That book was then turned into Blade Runner, which we've discussed the connections to in previous videos. Basically though, at its core is, do machines continue thinking after they're turned off, that sort of thing. If they dream, then they might have a soul, but the fact that Wendy doesn't could highlight she isn't human. Instead, she seems to just close her eyes and charge. It might be her clinging to the human side and just going through the motions, trying to keep some sort of continuity. Now we once more see Boy Cavalier reading to the kids, which is something we saw in episode 1. Reminded me heavily of on Her Majesty's Secret Service and Blofeld hypnotizing his sleeper cells. Now this is done because during sleep, people become docile and influenced by the voice. Thus, when they hear it in real life, they activate and are controlled like how they were under hypnosis. That was kind of the basis of MK Ultra, and I did wonder if Hawley was pulling from that or if we're reaching like hell.
But yeah, if you go to sleep listening to my videos, then chances are you will hit the subscribe now.
Either way, the siblings finally have some alone time, and she asks if he's mad at her because he had to go to her funeral. He didn't know she was technically still alive, and it's something that continues at the end with Slightly. His family also didn't know he survived. Slightly himself talked about how they cremated his father and how he wondered if he was still alive. So I do feel like the trauma of being swapped over has given the kids this weird perception of death, and how even their dead loved ones may still be alive. Makes you wonder if these kids did actually die. Mr. Sylvia later says,
Best case, we got a bunch of AIs running around thinking that they're human. Worst case, we killed 6 kids.
This kind of hints at something we've talked about before, in that the kids did indeed die. They were zipped up in body bags and even had flowers over their chests like a funeral. And personally, I think the machines are just copies rather than the actual kids. Nibs is starting to go haywire, and I feel like her violent outburst hints to the program clashing with itself. Ash actually went mental in Alien because his programs contradicted each other. In one, he's told to protect the crew, and in the other, he's told crew expendable. This was also a similar thing to what sent Hal crazy.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
He was designed for accuracy and honesty, but also kept his true mission secret. So these clashes are clearly coming to the surface, and with Curly attacking Dame, I was a bit like, whoa, are they gonna go mental? Now he mentions how if there was a way to see her when he was sick, then he would have found it. This is something Boy manipulates later, saying how if he was her brother, then he would have found a way.
All I know is if I was your brother, I'd find a way to be there.
I mean, of course you would, mate, you're a trillionaire. I think it also highlights, though, that he's been watching their conversations, as it feels like a line that's too close not to be. They then sit around and watch Ice Age, and she cries. It's interesting, as a robot wouldn't normally cry, but she knows all the emotions from her organic life. Now that Ice Age is Ice Age Continental Drift, and they may be watching it for a reason. This is, of course, what they watched as a kid, and it has lots of emotional ties. They quoted it in episode 2 when it was either Taste My Fury or Face My Fury. What's a line? But either way, That's what made Joe think that she really was his sister. Beyond that though, Ice Age is about a world in flux that's going from one era to the other. That's what's happening in the show as we jump from human to machine, and we're also seeing how brutal that nature is. Beyond that, the film would be over 100 years at this point, and it kind of highlights the cultural stagnation that everybody's going through. We're constantly being fed the same thing over and over, and even Joe's listening to old games of baseball. Everything's became boring, and you can see how Cavalier's desperate for something that challenges him. We then get lots of transition shots, and this includes a speaker that appears almost like a golden egg. Slightly then heads out to speak to Morrow in private, and also sits on what looks a bit like an egg. We see more spider imagery as one's on a web, and both show how poor Slightly's stuck in a web and how the Xenomorphs are spider-like. The facehuggers of course had this design as well, and they also looked at scorpions when designing the creature. The synthetic Kirsh then watches the footage of Morrow, asking when is the machine not a machine, all as boy Cavalier reads Peter Pan. Now both Cavalier and Morrow are using these children for their own gain. They're basically manipulating them to get what they want. I'll talk about the Peter Pan metaphors later, but you could see Morrow as being Captain Hook. He of course has that artificial hand which can even change into a blade. I did laugh at Slightly's naivety as well, as when he's asked to bring Morrow an egg, he says,
You don't have eggs where you are?
Now Slightly's tricked by using childish notions of heroes and villains. Morrow also presents the egg as his own property, so how is it wrong to give it back to the owner? Kind of builds off Kirsh last week, who said the ship was like a ball that had landed in his yard. It's moral to give back what was stolen, and the kids have a childish notion of right and wrong. For all the power these hybrids have, he still has to learn like everyone else. I do even wonder if their intelligence will evolve, or due to their immortality, that they'll stay like this forever. Can they upgrade and update how naive they are, and if they do that, are they still human? If that's the case and people can update their knowledge, then also surely they can be manipulated to think a certain way that the programmer wants them to. Toodles says later how he's learning zoology and advanced biology. It's also funny how some of the kids are striving to help out in the company more than some of the others. Both Curly and Toodles are doing this, whilst Smee and Slightly aren't. Some are being company kids, whereas the others just want to break free.
I want to break free!
Morrow then gives his name, and we learn that he's from Ghana. He does this so Smee does the same back, but Morrow then holds his family to ransom. And you could say he's morally ambiguous, eh?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
This manipulation, though, it's later mirrored in Cavalier. I love Morrow's face when he gets a name, and this is because he knows he's going to blackmail him. He looks incredibly happy and clearly wants to celebrate, but has to keep things cool. You can also see how childlike that Slightly is as he plays with the wall, but is then confronted by Kirsh. I also love how Slightly kept his cricket pads despite never needing them again. Like the drawings with Wendy, it's just a tie to his past that he doesn't want to let go of. I also wonder if they get to choose their own clothes, and if they do, they should check out our merch store below the video. There we've got a whole host of Predator and Alien themed t-shirts along with our brand new Building Better Worlds one. We also have our Wendy's weapon inspired one as well, and if you buy 3, you get 20% off. It's a smashing deal. Kirsh then talks about the 3 monkeys, which we discussed in our breakdown of episodes 1 and 2. They're supposed to represent hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. The Buddha's teaching is to help people not dwell on bad or negative thoughts, but since then, there's been another interpretation. That is how ignorance can be destructive. In ignoring things, we become naive to them, and thus evil's allowed to expand. The idea of hear no evil also plays into what's happening with Cavalier. Even though everyone's like, come on mate, don't fucking breed killer aliens mate, he's still like, oh man, can we get that guy's lung out and put a fucking alien in it? He's just completely ignorant and doesn't fully grasp exactly what he's doing. Now in this family relationship, I kind of see Dame as the mother and Kirsh as being like the surrogate father or uncle. He's kind of hinting to Slightly he knows something's slightly wrong and just wants to tell him like, yeah, come clean mate, we know. Like even the dialogue here is eerily similar to what Morrow said in the ship last week.
If I hurt or caused others to be hurt, would you do something to stop me, or would you look the other way?
Which I feel definitely calls back to this bit in episode 3.
Could you harm others, or allow them to be harmed?
He's basically presenting the moral question about if he saw him do something evil, would he intervene or tell someone else? Now when it comes to see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, If we look at the characters, we have several people that fit this mold. Wendy was deaf at the beginning of the episode, and thus she could fit the hear no evil. Nibs is obsessed with her eye, which could be see no evil. As for speak no evil, well, slightly refuses to talk about Morrow, even when things get really rough.
Careful.
I also love how Morrow's listening in at all times, and it's just so creepy. In the same way that the xenomorphs are parasites in the body, he's now infected slightly. The humans are also putting their brains into machines, so we have this constant parasitic relationship throughout. He's kind of like the Predator who's groomed slightly and told him if he tells anyone they're gonna get hurt. And honestly, I found this stuff way creepier than all the alien things. As we know though, Kirsh has been reviewing the tapes and essentially he hints to slightly that he knows. Part of me wonders if Kirsh is going to use this as both a way to get what he wants and maybe eliminate Cavalier in the process. I'm guessing that Kirsh can't hurt Boy, but potentially Morrow could come to the island and take him out for him. He too could go to Slightly as a friend and also manipulate him as well. Beyond this, it feels like he's using it as a test to see how Slightly works under pressure. It's also surprising to me that the young lad's conducting this in secret as he knows they're watching. Kirsh is able to see through his eyes, and Adam told him this last week, but he thinks that going away to a certain part of the island, it removes all that surveillance.
He dumb?
Speaking of eyes, we then cut to another parasitic relationship that takes over your body. That is Mike from Monsters Inc., aka your boy T. Oculus. Speaking of eyes, the creepy eyeballs sent in via an iris-like security hole. That's similar to the pod that the hybrids used when they collected the samples, and the doors in Alien, Alien Isolation, and also Alien Romulus. It's a horrifying scene as we see the Oculus take over the creature. We haven't seen this happen to a person, but it highlights what might have gone down on the Maginot. The Maginot! 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 Ho ho ho! Ho ho ho! It's got to put a French inflection on it there.
I would like to buy a dagger.
We also know it eventually ended up in the cat, and I hope in the end we get a crazy killer sheep running around the island. Like even it's standing there on two legs, just very unsettling, very horrifying. Boy looks amazed by it though, as Kirsh says it's fascinating. Timothy Olyphant's delivery is just so good, and he comes across really well as this cold, calculating synthetic. He himself is the Oculus watching the rest of the cast in the background through all the machines and monitors. The eye is also looking back as well.
Look how it's watching us.
And yeah, that episode title observation is bang on. Clearly, Boy looks concerned as he sees Kirsh study the sheep and constantly tries to get its attention, almost like, look at me, I am your master, that kind of thing.
Me.
I'm Mr. Meeseeks. Look at me.
The guy has just such a big ego, and it's much like how he's trying to control everything from the hybrids to Joe. I would love it though if we learn he's actually a hybrid himself when Kirsh makes his move. Oculus, though, that's giving me a real thing vibe, with that hiding in plain sight and controlling a creature from within. Just that spider-like design as well kind of plays off the head in that movie, and maybe that's what the web was referencing before. Adam then tries to warn him what would happen if just one of these escaped, but he says,
It's glass half full, kid.
Kind of plays into the three monkeys and how he's being optimistic and not dwelling on the negative. But yeah, mate, definitely do not give this guy a lung. Next, we see what looks like a Komodo dragon swimming in the water. It's sort of how we saw the Xenomorph last week, and it plays up the theme that there's lots of dangerous things on this island. There's the constant shots of predators, like the scorpion in episode 1, the spider from before, and we're now getting this. We end with the Xenomorph, and it shows how cavalier they are when it comes to dangerous animals. Pun not intended. The well was pun intended. I'm not lying to you. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just filling these videos with shit puns. The Sylvias then meet, and there's a clear rift between the pair. She forgives Cavalier for taking risks, as so far it's paid off. Arthur, though, he thinks it's all going to go wrong, and spoiler alert, probably right on the theory time right there. Arthur then brings up that they may have killed kids, and it clearly touches a nerve with Dame. Due to her past, it's clear kids are a sore point, and this is then made worse by Nips. Here's a couple who couldn't have kids, and then we get someone who shouldn't be able to have them at all, saying that she's pregnant. Okay. I do wonder if either Dame or Arthur might get face-tugged, and then what comes forth could be seen as their child, similar how in Aliens, Ash referred to the creature as Kane's son. That will play off the twisted pregnancy themes throughout the franchise, but we also have that basically showcased in Nibs. She says something is growing inside of her, and this could be a fracture. She has a chat with Dame, and it's funny how this is her basically being given the talk. Every so often, the show highlights how these machines are just kids. In episode 1, Wendy was even laughing at the sperm.
Isn't a sperm what comes out of a boy and then goes into the girl's egg?
And lots of their childish notions and lack of understanding about things, that all ties back to pregnancy and so on, which is, of course, a massive theme in Alien. Nibs mentions how God brings babies, and I did find it interesting how despite the tech advances, she's still holding on to this idea of a higher power. This is something that Prometheus and Covenant also explored as well, but in the end, they revealed it was aliens. However, Nibs believes that she may have had an immaculate conception. Mary conceived Jesus without biological input from Joseph, which is similar to what's happening here, if it is at all. This scene is basically just a sex education scene for the character though.
Men have nubs. Women have families. Pop nub. Infamy.
Doesn't go down well, and Nibs is constantly traumatized by what happened on the ship. This fear could be corrupting her code and basically destroying her from the inside. She also says her kid wants to be called Clarissa, but later refers to it as Trevor.
Trevor, it's a good name.
This is clearly her shutting down and struggling to deal with coming face to face with a monster. People in traumatic situations like this, not with aliens and stuff, but they'll often exert power over something weak to show they still have control. It's basically why people who are abused tend to go on to abuse. Kids who are bullied are normally bullied at home, and there is the feeling that Nibs doing this to Dame here, it's basically why she attacks her. She's trying to show how powerful she is, and kind of cope herself. I hadn't thought about them attacking humans before this scene, but I do think that's the way the show's gonna go. Either way, Nibs doesn't want to be reminded that she's got a machine body and is clinging to anything human, even if it's ridiculous like saying she's having a kid. We then watch Dame get some flavor strip tease, and she uses this as a distraction and sounds the security alarm. You'd be terrified, but I do wonder if the kids start to become more like soldiers, if Cavalier will see the value in that. It shows how they could also be used as weapons, which is something that would make a lot of money. The pregnancy may also be her hearing the facehuggers and not knowing what she's hearing. We still don't know exactly why it's only Wendy who can pick it up, and that might not even be the case. She may think she's pregnant while hearing the eggs talk to her, and yeah, she does kind of zone out and clearly has something else going on with her. Nibs is also somewhat acting like a teenager, uninterested in what her parents are saying, and she's then confined to her room. Nibs, to me though, she's a ticking time bomb, and Dame calls it a level 3 event, which indicates that they're prepared for this situation. Personally, I think it's going to go to a shutdown, and they'll then inspect her code. But from here, we cut to Joe speaking to Adam, as mentioned earlier. The siblings being forced to observe and report on his sister, which reminds me a lot of Ex Machina. In that movie, a man's hired to conduct the Turing test. Named after the legendary scientist Alan Turing, it's intended to deduce if a machine is a machine or if it can pass as being a human. In the test, they didn't know it was AI, whereas in the film, they ended up being told in advance. And still had to see, whether they passed or not. Also, look at this lovely cover. Look at the cover. It's... Oh, great spoiler alert if you've not seen it. It also seems like Adam Eames might be a machine, as we saw him catch the ball earlier. This is the same thing that Wendy caught in episode 1. This came after Boy said if he didn't know any better, he'd think she was human. So Adam catching the ball shows he might be a synth. He also stands next to some faces which sort of play off the see no evil thing. Perhaps they could also be showing the steps to creating someone like him. Boy has said that the transfer tends to work better on kids, but to know that, he'd need to have tried it on an adult. So Adam may even be a hybrid of his dad. Is he? I don't know, but a flashback episode of Prodigy's creation would be a lot of fun if we get it. Joe then solemnly says, "I'm your man." But he's clearly reluctant. In his mind, there's still a hope he's gonna take his sister home, but there's no way they can escape Prodigy. Now Adams mentions that she's the first step on the path to their transhuman future. Transhuman was actually a term coined by Julian Huxley in 1957. It was thought of as a way to supplant human evolution by the way of technology. The richest people in the world, like Jeff Bezos, they've funded several anti-aging companies, and many transhumanists want to eliminate disease. Critics argue it's a form of eugenics and that the poor will be left behind while only the rich will benefit, which is exactly what we're seeing here. As no doubt, uploading the mind, that'll only be attainable by the people who can pay, or sign their life over to the company. This is also an idea that was explored in the Prime Video series Upload, and yeah, when you're watching this, seeing how the corporation act, do you really want to sign over to become their immortal slave? Creepily, Boy's watching Joe interact with his squad mates. Cavalier's barefoot again, using his foot to point to where to sit. In our first breakdown, we talked about how he met with Yutani and sat with his feet up on the table. In Japan, this is a major sign of disrespect, so would have been a massive thing to Yutani. He's doing it here to Wendy and basically showing how she's like something on the bottom of his foot. He asks her if it was like pirates or Indians when she fought the alien. Again, it just highlights how everything here comes back to Peter Pan. The guy's trying to stay young forever and discover a way to do that. Children have infinite imagination and are capable of being prodigies, so he wants to be forever young. Now, last week, mate, our editor Matt was saying how the Xenomorph's like the crocodile. I was like, yeah, whatever, mate, talking shit, but I'll put it in the script anyway. However, Reach confirmed, Boy compares the creature to the beast. That, of course, also swallowed an alarm clock which alerted everyone to its presence. She can hear the species communicate, and now the ticking is like its usage here. So I do wonder if when it inevitably escapes, which it definitely will do, when they go and search the island, if kind of Wendy will be used as like the sniffer dog. Wendy also used a hook to beat it, like Captain Hook had. So Reach confirmed. Let's fucking go! Theory time confirmed, motherfucker! Either way, Wendy wants to send the creatures back, whereas Boy says they should send Joe home instead. Especially as no one else gets their brothers or sisters.
What kind of intellectual argument is please?
Alright, debate bro. Gets played on later when Slightly's furious at seeing Joe. Especially after his mother and brothers are being threatened by Morrow. If they were allowed to stay with him, then they'd be safe. So he takes a dislike to him and wants to sacrifice him to the facehugger. I love the acting here though, and Sydney Chandler does a brilliant job playing a kid who's stuck in an adult's body and trying to act old. All the kids, I think, seem really vulnerable and helpless, and all the actors convincingly nail the emotions. Boy is trying to isolate her from her family, which again is a metaphor for child abuse. He uses Joe as a tool to get Wendy to do what he wants, and it's a very chilling scene with some excellent acting. Now, while she's a machine, he manipulates her by playing on her emotions. That's how these machines are controlled, and it's what's driving all their decisions. Even Nibs and Curly are controlled by jealousy. Now that to me is similar how Tinkerbell was jealous of Peter Pan paying attention to Wendy. Cavalier is also just like Peter Pan here.
I am Peter Pan!
He wants Wendy to stay on his island away from her family and never grow up. Continuing the metaphor of Morrow being Captain Hook, he tricks Slightly similar how Hook tricked Tinkerbell. We then see Tootles say he wants to change his name. You might have noticed last week that he overheard Nibs discussing this, and that feels like it's why he's doing it here. All the kids are trying to be the best of the best of the best, sir, and they're all desperate to get one up on the others. Even the way he tells Slightly he's got a new name, it's kind of done to put him in his place. Again though, the acting here is great, and Kit Young nails being that bratty little shit teen. Kirsh also allows him to change his name, which is a rare act of kindness from the synthetic. He's almost trying to get him on his side, and I feel like he'll lead an uprising. It's funny how Slightly asks if they can just change their name as well. Even having to ask this shows how he has very little agency. He kills it here though, and looks slightly confused and withdrawn while also trying to downplay it. Normally in horror movies, when characters do stupid stuff, you're like, oh mate, Alien Covenant, that movie's terrible. However, I think the fact they're kids excuses it, because yeah, any adult would be like, let's not unleash the facehuggers. Kirsh then monitors Slightly and we can see inside his head. It's crazy getting this view of them and realizing all they are is simply just a processor. Morrow then reveals he's met with Slightly's mother. Babu Cisse excels here, and he's such a creepy villain. Like in general, pretty much all the characters are creepy, but you get the threat here that he's extremely dangerous, especially as he's remained calm in front of a Xenomorph. Morrow's request takes on a very, very scary turn as he asks Slightly to sacrifice a person. He's tasked with breeding a xenomorph, which he'll then come to collect. It's heartbreaking seeing his mother talk to him, and now he's got to go and protect his family. It plays on their first meeting and how Morrow asked if he could bring harm to others. Their Slightly mentioned parents, and Morrow's used it because it was clearly a weak point. Poor Slightly has been massively manipulated, and there's no real way to go back. We then see Kirsh go look at the eggs. He has to unlock the door to do this, and I do feel like this will come back around again. No biological humans can go into the lab though, so it will be a big ask for the lad as he needs to trick someone into going there. Saying biological human as well, dear me, the show's getting to me. Also, having just done a breakdown of Alien vs Predator, I did laugh when Morrow said the infected would have a bad couple of days. Because in that movie, the facehugger goes on and the alien hatches in like less than 10 minutes. Just whatever the writer needs, really. We then catch up with all the kids eating synthetic Bertie Bott's all-flavored jelly beans. This does kind of shut down the theory that Boy is a hybrid because he ate an apple, though it could have been a synthetic one. Also, yeah, I'm not planning that idea as being true, mate. We're just discussing theories about what it could be. Don't kill me, yeah? Don't write in the comments, I'm gonna kill you, Paul. They're also playing Jenga, and I did wonder if these were concrete blocks or something that requires a lot of strength. I loved seeing the kids messing around for a bit though, and actually being kids. We hear about how they can upload books and learn what they want, which again, isn't really learning, it's just simply copying data. Curly then asks what the 5 corporations are. Joe says they've fixed all the problems in the world, but this is clearly propaganda and likely why people are just so subservient to them. It shows the hybrids have no idea about the world around them, and it's kind of like when you were a kid and had no idea about politics. Boy, he controls the narrative and decides what way they see the world. It's also a mirror of the conversation Malachite had on the Maginot in episode 1. That scene showed how everyone should know this stuff, whereas the ignorant, poor kids, they don't. Joe then theorized that Yutani's likely asking the rest of the 5 to intervene and help them get back their specimens. Something we might see in the future, and Boy may even need them to come in if an outbreak happens on the island. We saw in the AVP flashbacks what happens when the creature's over on a location, and there the Predators wiped out an entire civilization, just to cover it up. Wendy then scolds Slightly for being rude, and she says she's the oldest. However, their original bodies are older than her, but she was transferred into her hybrid first, so is she older? Not really. Slightly then makes a desperate plea to get the others to demand their parents are brought here. However, this fails. Curly and Isaac like it here, and they get respect, which they don't feel like they'll get from their parents. But that respect clearly isn't universal. It crushes Slightly though, and the only way to save his mother now lies in the death of another. This might be why when we see him looking at Joe through the window, it hints at he's gonna get revenge by sacrificing him. Something I bet Cavalier would be happy with as well. Wendy might even see the creature that comes out of him as being like a transformed version of Joe. This could even be seen as being like a butterfly, and I think this would be a really messed up way to take things. The body horror is then mirrored in the end where we see Joe inspecting his scar. His lung is now in the lab and Wendy goes to visit it. Wendy's almost singing it a bedtime song, just like her namesake did to the Lost Boys and Peter Pan. It's like she woos it out and then is able to fully snake charm it on the table.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal.
It's absolute nightmare fuel, not you, mate, but she subdues it using her abilities. It's almost biblical in its themes, as we had a snake in the Garden of Eden. Eve taking the apple was a metaphor for humans gaining knowledge, and in a way the hybrids are in the Garden of Eden. They're limited in their knowledge and are prevented from leaving. Again, Boy ate an apple in episode 1, which we mentioned was a metaphor for knowledge in our video. While the snake tempted Eve, here she's controlling it, showing humanity's evolution. She is defying Satan and God and basically becoming the next path on where we're going to go from here. Kirsh watches on, and I would love to know what he's thinking deep down inside. He's easily my favourite character in the show, and he's as morally ambiguous as the rest of them. We then close out with Wendy petting the creature and potentially imprinting upon it. So what happens next, we really don't know, but yeah, I love how the show's now off doing its own thing. I did criticize the opening for being just member berries, but this is now carving out its own path. We end with a xenomorph on the island, a worry about what's going to happen, and here is Ocean Size by Jane's Addiction plays over the credits. It's a single from their 1988 debut album, Nothing's Shocking. You can tell that Noah Hawley's really thought about these tracks, as that album contains their biggest song, Jane Says, which other shows or movies would likely use over that one because it's a bit more obscure. Perry Farrell actually wrote the song about being homeless, which you can apply to the characters. Perry lived in a house with 14 other people, and they all had to clean it together. They were then evicted, and Ocean Size is about his wish to never have to move. I mean, looking for a flat shit in it. The hybrids and Joe are all kind of homeless in a way though, but they might have to move out. Like Curly and Toodles says, they're living a dream, just like Perry did in his nice clean house. However, they are there at the whim of the boy genius. So how things are going to go, we don't know, but overall this was another great episode and was more like season 1 Legion that basically dealt with lots of theories about what it meant to be human and lots of mind-bending stuff. I'm not even like that bothered about the xenomorphs anymore. I just love the comments on AI that it's taking. I can't wait to see that xenomorph grow though, and yeah, there's so much alike here, and that closes out our breakdown. Please drop a like on the video as well, and also leave a comment with all your thoughts below. If you want to follow us on Instagram, then make sure you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos? If you click the join button, you get at least a breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month, and we've tried to set it where hopefully it's not a lot to you, but if a lot of you do it, means a hell of a lot to us. Huge thank you again, and yeah, if you want to get some t-shirts or merch stores below, but I'll see you on the next one, mate. If you want something else to watch, video on screen right now, we might have the Alien vs Predator video up, we might not, and if we don't, I'm sorry, but it's coming very, very soon. With that out of the way though, I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.